One of the strangest things that the Penitent One comes across on his adventures across Custodia is a silvery-haired man locked within an iron tomb amidst the freezing slopes of the mountains outside of Albaro. This man, named Gemino, will send the Penitent One on a side quest that has different endings depending on how long it takes him to complete it. Yet there's one similarity between them. Gemino's reference to a mysterious call beckoning him from deeper in the mountains. He never explains what this call is, preferring to keep the secret for himself. To uncover that secret, the story of not only Gemino, but the history of this entire area of Custodia needs to be pieced together. These mountain slopes were not always as cold, oppressive, and lifeless as they are now. They actually used to be covered in lush, plentiful olive trees. Every day, the sisters of the convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage made their way to this grove of olive trees to gather the fruit to make the hot oil that they use in their various ceremonies in the convent. However, every day, once their chore had been done and the sisters would head back to their mountaintop sanctuary, one sister, a woman named Ingracia, would stay behind to stay amongst the trees. The others didn't really know why. But when a few caught glimpses of her crying, alone with the trees, they figured that's why she stayed behind, to suffer through some unknown sadness and solitude. When droughts swept over the land, killing the crops of Albaro, the sisters found that the only thing that was spared from withering away in the dust was their grove of olive trees. It was strange, they couldn't explain why. Until they considered what was different about the grove, Ingracia's solitude. Thus, a new theory was dreamed up about her mysterious ways. While she wallowed there, alone on the mountain slopes, she watered the olive trees with her tears, using her bitterness and pain to give them life. One day, when the sisters of the convent made their way to their olive grove, they found Ingracia slumped against one of the trees, dead. Their hands heavy with sadness, they created a wonderful tomb for Ingracia in a cave near her treasured olive trees, where she lies as majestic, forlorn, and beautiful as she was in life. The sisters never determined whether she died from sorrow or from some other means, but what they did know was that with her life ended, she was free from the dark clutches of the never-ending depression that hung heavy over her existence. However, the end of Ingracia also spelled the end of the enduring healthiness of the grove of olive trees, as without the tears of her suffering to give them life, they dried up, withered away, and died, giving the area its new name, Where Olive Trees Wither. The chill wind of the mountaintop blew downward, carrying with it thick snows that weighed the dead branches with a chilly burden and covered the ground in a thick blanket that froze it solid. The sisters of the convent abandoned the grove, finding it hopeless that any further plant life could take root in the frozen wasteland, even surrendering the knowledge of where they lay in Gracia to the cold and the snow that came to claim their former sister's domain. However, their vacancy of the area presented an opportunity for someone else to move in, one seized by the inquisitors of the Mother of Mothers. They were always looking for new, creative ways to punish blasphemers and heretics of the Holy Church, and the unique conditions of the former grove gave them just that. They would march criminals up to the mountain slopes, leaving those that collapsed on the trek to freeze to death in the snow. Those that survived were locked within cages which forced them into a praying position that the inquisitors suspended from the branches of the dead olive trees, their fate to die of exposure to the wind and the cold. The cages were not the only method used though, as the inquisitors also attached hollow metal statues to trees, where the criminals entombed within suffered a similar freezing end. This was the fate of the silvery-haired Gemino, whose blasphemous beliefs led him to being sentenced to death by the inquisitors. As he made the climb up the slopes of Where Olive Trees Wither to meet his doom, he stepped upon a frozen olive, a reminder of what this place used to be, and collected it for himself, knowing it would be the last thing he would treasure. Shortly thereafter, He was then locked inside one of the iron statues and left to die. As his hair blew in the wind and the cold started numbing his body, he began to hear something, a voice calling to him, beckoning him. But given his current situation, there was no way he could answer it. It was hopeless. That is, until the penitent one, on a journey of his own, came upon the imprisoned man. Seeing it as a sign of the miracle that the others spoke of, Gemino asked for the penitent one's aid. For some reason, he felt that the voice wanted him to suffer the same pain as the sisters of the convent of Our Lady of the Charred Visage, to suffer the burns of their holy oil. So he requested the penitent one retrieve some of the oil from the convent at the mountain's top and bring it to him here so that he may feel that pain before he died. The penitent one complied, making it past the graveyard of the peaks to reach the convent, finding a chalice of burning oil in a chamber past the lady of the sanctuary. He filled the golden thimble given to him by Gemino with the oil, and made his way back to the entombed man. If the penitent one's journey was delayed by other competing priorities, then when he returns to Gemino, he will find that he has undergone a strange arboreal transformation, and is now part of the tree he was attached to. The penitent one can still fulfill the promise he made to the man, pouring the burning oil into his veins, allowing him to feel its warmth. But by this point, it's too late. Gemino has died, and that mysterious call is no longer ringing in his ears. At his feet lies his precious frozen olive, fallen from his hand at the moment that he passed to the other side of the dream. However, if the penitent one didn't delay in his quest and immediately set out to help Gemino, then when he returns, he will find the man in the midst of his transformation, while there's still hope. After the hot oil enters Gemino's veins and he realizes the call can still be answered, he will no longer answer the penitent one, who will have no choice but to leave the man to his solitude. Yet, when he returns sometime later, he will find Gemino's statue empty, with the only indication of its previous occupant being his precious frozen olive. A search through the mountains will lead the penitent one to a cave that before led to a dead end, but now has a new path revealed into its depths. As he proceeds into the darkness, the penitent one will find gnarled, gangly, tree-like creatures with human features, all hovering around a sarcophagus, one of whom has familiar, silvery hair. This is what remains of Gemino, who was able to find the source of that mysterious voice. And apparently, he wasn't the only person to have heard it. There were others that were beckoned and had made it all the way here to the source of the call, where they too underwent arboreal transformations. Within the clutches of what used to be Gemino lies the lid of the coffin, opening up a passage through the container to a chamber below. But before the penitent one jumps, he notices something else within Gemino's hands. Dried flowers bathed in tears. Feeling they are significant in some way, he grabs the fragile flowers and jumps through the opening, coming upon the lost tomb of Ingracia. Like the creatures above, she's undergone a transformation with tangled, knotted roots growing from her body. Her fate, along with those above, indicate that even though she's gone to the other side of the dream, and even though her body is no longer made of flesh and blood, she's been taking care of her precious olive trees, using her own body and the bodies of others to cultivate their growth in a hope to return the area back to the lush vibrancy of its past. In a final act of respect, the penitent one lies the dried flowers bathed with tears upon the remains of the woman, obtaining a fraction of her strange power, and ending the story of Ingracia, Gemino, and where olive trees wither. Now before we conclude the video, there's one more thing we need to discuss. The lore page of the Knot of Rosary Rope items also mentions Ingracia. However, the developers have come out to say that this Ingracia was meant to be a separate character, but was accidentally named the same. The rosary knot in Gracia is actually Soledad, the caged ghost below the Brotherhood of the Silent Sorrow, and has an interesting, although much shorter, story of her own. I recommend reading the lore page of the item when you get a chance. But with that cleared up, that'll end this one. If you have any questions, feel free to ask and I'll do my best to answer them. Until next time, thank you for watching and see you later.